Howdy folks, Albert Moore, Blue Jacket Archery here today. And it is the day after New Year's, and we're a little bit bored, so we thought we'd take this moment and review and show you, or highlight, I guess, the new Bear Execute. All right, now this is the 32 that we have, and as you can see here, that we have completely disassembled one end of this bow. And we'll get to that in a minute. But before I do get into these pieces and show you how this bow is constructed, before I do, you have got to get your mind wrapped around this, and you have to literally take out any past perceptions or any past conceptions, whatever the word is there. What would be the right word there, Bob? Boss, my cameraman. Any past, whatever, you know what I mean, impressions that you've had about bear in the past, and throw it right out the window. This bow has literally set new standards in the industry and in bear especially. Okay, when I show you these parts, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Now, first off, you have to understand that every piece of this bow, every major component of this bow is now machined from solid billet. No more castings like their previous models were. No casting pogs, no cast risers. This bow is 100% machined parts from top to bottom. All right. In the past, their bows had cast risers, cast-in pockets, and they left a lot to be desired as far as shootability, accuracy, tunability, the whole 9 yards. So anyway, that said, let's dive into this here. Now, first thing we're going to talk about is the cam. All right. This is the new redesigned Echo Cam that Bear introduced a few years back. Okay. It's pretty much the same cam. They did refine it in a few areas. I know last year and the year before they had trouble with the cam. One segment of the cam right up in this area here was a little bit brutal on serving on the string. It was ripping stuff up. Well, they've kind of remedied that now. We've been shooting this bow for probably a month and a half, 2 months, and we've had zero problems with it. Zero. Now, also what they've done, for those of you that are familiar with this cam, in the past, the screws were on one side and all the adjustment marks were on the other side. Well, it was a real son of a gun to adjust a draw then, because you had to see both sides of the cam. That's very difficult to do that and hold the module in its place. Well, this year, the screws and the marks are all on the same side. They made it much easier. Also, you'll notice here they went to a huge 5/8 bearing with 1/4-inch axles. Okay. That is something new for Bear. Now, you have to understand something, folks. I'm not going to do this video here and say that this bow is built better than any other $1,000+ bow in the market. That's not what I'm saying here. There are many other bows on the market that have set standards for the rest of the industry to follow, Hoyt being number one. Some years back, Hoyt was literally setting standards that the rest of the industry was chasing. Forget about Matthews back then. Hoyt was blowing them right out of the water. Now, Hoyt has somewhat kind of slacked off of that here the last few years from what we've seen. But nevertheless, we're going to compare this bow here to other bows. So what we're saying is this bow is not any better than any other flagship bow. Well, maybe one. But the point is, this bow is every bit as strong and robustly built and as brute tough assembled as any other flagship bow in the market, period, bar none. If a person does not give themselves the opportunity to try out one of the new Bear Executes, you're doing yourself a great disservice. So now that said, let's move into the axle. I already told you that it's a 1/4-inch axle. All right. Now here's something else I really like what they've done. And here again, there are other manufacturers doing this, but Bear has followed suit here finally. Now, 1/4-inch axle, no more E-clips on the end of the limbs. There's no more E-clips here. This axle goes through the limb, and they have screws. It's an internal thread in the axle here. All right. And the screws go into the end like this with a very attractively done cone-shaped washer here, or cup-shaped, or a cone-shaped cup that goes against the limb to assure you positive alignment and rugged durability. A lot of other manufacturers that do this are using flathead screws with just a flat washer on it, rather than a lot more sturdy built cone-shaped cup. Okay, that's one thing. Now, the limbs are 1-inch wide limbs, and they've actually machined off the corners of the limb to give it a lot more attractive appeal here. All right, that really has nothing to do with the strength, although I could see where it could reduce chipping and nicking. Should you get a little bit tough on the bow in a hunting situation, you could very easily reduce chipping and nicking here by rounding that edge off rather than having a square edge protruding out the back of the bow, making it vulnerable to damage. So they have done that. So kudos to that. They're thinking ahead on this bow. They've thought about everything I can possibly think of on this bow. Now, let's get into the limb pocket. This limb pocket, folks, when I show it to you here, is absolutely the most robust, beefy, strongest, immovable limb pocket that I've ever seen in my life, and I've been doing this for 30 years. I have seen every brand of bow you can possibly name completely disassembled. Some of them don't even exist anymore. All right, this is all machine parts. Look at the size of this thing. Very attractively done, and just absolutely, there is no weak parts in this limb pocket at all. At all. Now, people say, well, what's the importance of a limb pocket? Big deal, so what? It's strong. Some other manufacturers don't have a strong limb pocket. The limb pocket is a very key area of a bow. That's why we keep coming back to limb pockets on bows. The limb pocket is the attachment point. Okay, that's where all the energy gets dumped when you shoot the bow. That's where it's attached. Where else is the energy going to go? A lot of it goes through the shot. I get it, but it gets dumped into the limb pocket. So without a very strong, robust, immovable limb pocket, you can get adverse accuracy downrange, tuning issues, the whole 9 yards. 2 to 3 thousandths of movement in a limb pocket. 2 to 3 thousandths of movement can mean, in a lot of situations, a 2 to 3 inch miss at 40 yards. Now, I get it on this broadside of an animal, 2 to 3 inches, big deal. It's not quite that critical. But if you have to hit this at 40 yards all at once, 2 to 3 inches is a problem. So now, we're not done yet. You know, I've already shown you how beefy and strong this limb pocket is. I don't think there's a limb pocket on the face of the planet that is more robust and as strongly constructed as this limb pocket. And I'm including all of them out there. Hoyt, Matthews, PSE, especially Bowtech. Now, all right. So let's just see how the limbs attach in here. The limbs, which by the way, folks, the limb fit in this bow is absolutely super, super tight. I actually had trouble getting these son of a guns out of here. I don't think I've ever seen a limb pocket fit a limb this tight in my life. That son of a gun is tight. So once the limb pocket's in there, now you have very strong, very beefy 10 by 24 thread screws here that go into the limb through here to hold the limb to the limb pocket. But they left absolutely no chance of flex or movement in this system. None. This thing is just absolute brutal strong. Now, so that said, so I can't get that thing back out of here. There we go. Now, let's take a look at the limb bolt. See this? Great big beveled trough in there. Look what they've done here. Look at the size of that wedge on that limb bolt that they have stuck down in there to hold everything solid. And it does pivot. It has to pivot because whenever you back the limb weight off, that pocket's going to rotate. So this thing has to pivot. It has to pivot like this, okay? So they've literally thought of everything. This thing, I'm telling you, I can't say enough about how well this thing's assembled and built. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. Now, we've covered that. They also have a big giant aluminum sleeve here that goes into the riser here, much like a lot of other companies do the same thing. But we're trying to tell you here, Bear is no slouch. There's nothing left out here. They have gone above and beyond, every bit as good as everybody else, and in some cases better. Now, you can see that. Now, we're going to show you how this limb pocket fits onto the bow. This is impressive. All right, you can see here, there's 2 threaded holes right here on the end of that riser. That limb pocket fits in here like this, and it'll only get down so far. All right. Now, what do they do about alignment in here? What do they do about that? Well, we're going to show you what they did. They got 2 big screws here with these huge sleeves and cups that fit down in here. And you can see this is the stepped process. See the step there. All right. The smaller part fits down into the hole of the limb pocket right here to center everything. And then they take some more 10-32 screws, put them down in there, and you can see that's what screws into the riser. There's absolutely no shift, no movement, no nothing on this bow. Again, folks, I can't say this enough. The sheer brute strength and the precision tolerances on this bow is just absolutely off the charts. Bear has just knocked it literally out. They didn't only knock it out of the park. They knocked it out of the entire city. All right. So that said, it does have plastic limb rockers right here, which everybody has that. I know you've heard me say sometimes about Tupperware in a limb pocket. Well, here on the limb rockers, you have to use polymer or something. If you didn't, the limb resting right on the aluminum would just eventually crack and break the limb. So everybody has to have polymer or plastic here to cushion that limb from against the limb pocket. All right, so now what else? We covered the axles, we covered the limb pocket. Now also this limb pocket, for those of you that are familiar with this, in 2019, Bear came out with a bow called the Perception. We run out of time, Bob. Anyway, so I'm gonna have to hurry here. This is basically designed, excuse me, based off of the Perception limb pocket that they built back in 2019. It was a $1,500 shoot-through riser hunting bow. However, they upped the ante here. The Perception limb pocket was 5 different pieces bolted together. This is all one piece. I swear you could use this for a wheel chock in your truck and not hurt it, or beat a rhinoceros to death with it and not hurt the thing. This sucker is built. So that said, I don't really know what else to cover. If you don't take the opportunity to try when the new Bear executes, you're doing yourself a great disservice. Now, when you shoot the bow does have just a millisecond of vibration when you shoot it that some of the other bows don't have. But once you load it up with a good stabilizer and your accessories, probably 80% of that disappears immediately. So give yourself the opportunity to try out the new Bear Execute. This thing is absolutely phenomenal. We cannot say enough how well they constructed this bow. Well, that's it for today, folks. We're running out of time. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to call us. We don't answer a lot of messages sometimes. We don't get good service here. Anyway, this is Albert Moore, Blue Jacket Archery. Have a great year, folks. Thank you.